to reconcile the two perspectives that we had on that, you said you believed you read something from him saying it was a parody, and I think it's at least with the Philip Larkin thing, it's Batman trying to apply order unsuccessfully to an increasingly chaotic dark age world of radicalizing villains. I think you can see that in the villains because he chooses a bunch of villains that were quite prominent in the Bronze Age. And
we also
makes
have to
them...
pay attention to the fact that he is trying to be very allegorical with the Alice in Wonderland as well, going down the rabbit hole. He explicitly runs into the Mad Hatter.
Yes. Yeah, well, Mad Hatter was one of these villains where Grant Morrison, in his script, turns him into a paedophile.
Yes, for some reason. That's why...
You can kind of interpret it as the Mad Hatter.
You can definitely interpret it, but Grant Morrison makes it much more explicit. What Grant Morrison is doing in this comic, in a lot of places, is taking a lot of implicit interpretations and making them very explicit. Like the interpretation of Joker's actually in love with Batman is very clear in this.
He was going to make him a transvestite.
The Joker is very flamboyant. The Joker is like pinching Batman's bottom.
He calls him big boy and darling and...
It's very camp, it's very over the top, and it's also, it's kind of implied in his later interpretations of the Joker, but it's toned down a lot in those ones to the point where I much prefer his other interpretations of the Joker.
Definitely.
Actually, that is one big annoyance I have with the art style, because it also goes over into the speech bubbles and renders, because the Joker has no speech bubbles, he just has red floating sketchy text, makes his dialogue almost unreadable.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
You really have to squint to be able to tell what he's saying.
Yeah, well, there's these loads of interpretations building off of that this is Batman's repressed sexuality, because it's all about Freud. He calls Joker a filthy degenerate, and people say, oh, he's overreacting,
just
considering
turning
he's dressed
everything
in black leather.
into it being about sex makes it so much more compelling.
Well,
yes.
someone read into Clayface, the Preston Payne Clayface, this being, because he's melting people to the touch, that he represents AIDS. Because Batman's afraid of touching him and decaying.
He breaks his legs.
Yeah.
Let's go out and break AIDS legs.
But it's also like, okay, you clearly didn't read continuity in the Bronze Age before that if you believe that was the interpretation, because Preston Payne exists and melts people. He's not walking AIDS.
Have you watched South Park?
Bits and pieces.
Have you watched the one where they're watching making movies, making songs,
I have
fighting
not.
around the
I don't know what
world?
you're saying.
It's great. I think it's Russell Crowe. They're watching a TV show of Russell Crowe going around the world and getting into fights with things.
Right.
And he says, today we're going to fight cancer. And he goes to a hospital, finds a cancer patient. And he goes, right, cancer, come here. And starts beating the crap out of a cancer patient. That's like that. It's like, okay, if Clayface represents AIDS, then we should just go beat up AIDS. That's what we should do.
Is that how Joe Biden's going to promise to finish cancer by the end of his administration?
That's how he's going to win over LGBT support. Don't worry.
I'm going to box AIDS, man.
He's going to find an AIDS patient and start poking him in the chest really aggressively.
Come on, Jack, push-ups. AIDS, you and me. Anyway. But there's actually quite a lot of sexual dimorphism in here, and it's, again, because of Morrison's personal life, which he's now spewed over into his comics and activism. I mean, you see Clownfish all the time where they can switch genders. You see Amadeus Arkham, like most serial killers, have this weird relationship with his mother and wear a wedding dress.
Oh, yeah, when he kills his own mother in an act of transcendence, almost, as it's presented in the comic. For some reason, and he says, oh, to me at the time, I don't know why I did it, but it felt perfectly sane to do so. He immediately puts on his mother's dress and starts praying to some god that he doesn't even seem to believe in. It's very, very strange and very sexually charged the whole way through. There's definitely an Oedipus complex coming through there.
I do like how the one character that actually transcends, or believes he does though, is Maxi Zeus, and his prize is he gets to hold a bucket of his own shit. So it's like, right, Morrison, maybe, if you're doing this in your personal life and you're basing all the villains off yourself, maybe detour from this, because it isn't doing you all that good.
It's definitely, as well as being a parody of the grim, dark, edgy Batman, it leans so far into those elements as to kind of make it hard for me to take this story seriously. We're introduced to Two-Face by him
defecating on himself because he can't make any choices.
Wetting himself. Although, I will say, there is a very interesting criticism of what I could interpret as leftist attempts to rehabilitate the insane and the criminally insane in this. And there is a consistent, and I don't know if Grant Morrison would probably if he would disavow this or
I
not
think it's
nowadays.
unintended, but
There's a constant parallel drawn between the sexual dimorphism that you're talking about and insanity.
Yeah.
The idea of gender bending is something that only violent and criminally insane people do.
Put the lotion in the basket.
Yeah, it's constantly associated, and you could almost say it's almost a reactionary, certainly by today's standards, interpretation, in the same way that Silence of the Lambs has that association between sexual degeneracy and violence.
Even though it desperately tries to disavow it but doesn't do it very well. Again, go watch our Halloween special on that.
No, of course. And that follows in this as well. And also there is a criticism of the idea that these therapists are trying to cure these people in the first place when they can't be cured. Even Batman is like, what the hell have you done to Two-Face? Yeah, he was crazy and insane, but he was at least able to make decisions using his coin flip.
Yeah.
Now you've given him a pack of 52 tarot cards and he can't make any decisions to the point where he just wets himself if he needs to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
This isn't helping them. It's not helping anybody, because Two-Face, if he gets out, is still probably going to go out and try and murder people. You're not rehabilitating people. You're kind of just farting about to make it feel like you've done something.
Yeah, well, I think it's unintentional, because Morrison, being a progressive, being a gender-bending person himself, going
Being
by
a they,
them
now.
And also, he modelled Joker's own aesthetics off of his drag persona, so I do think that he's saying, by being super sane,
damn it, Grant Morrison
is masturbating to himself and saying, see, I'm crazy, I'm smart, take a load of drugs and be gender
There is
amorphous or whatever.
probably an intention to try and do it like, oh, see, the people who really see through society are the ones who don't even participate in it, because they're what you consider insane, kind of a Foucaultian.
Yeah, it's this sort of
approach.
cope from manic depressive people who say, like, I'm not depressed, I'm just realistic about the state of the world, man. It's like, no, you kind of are. You want to help yourself
But
out of the
once again, it kind of shows that even when he's trying to parody it, even when he's trying to be critical of that, by virtue of being a Batman story, it kind of does a 180 and gives the opposite message by accident instead. Because once again, unless you just have him team up with Antifa, it's really hard to write a left-wing Batman story.
Well, what ends the story? Two-Face reverting to a binary and then making a choice.
Yeah, and he says, and he turns around to the pack of cards and goes, "Who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards," and then smacks them over.
Yep, exactly. So he's literally like, Morrison, screw your symbolism, screw your amorphism, flip a coin, yes or no, morality and reality is binary, and then I'm going to make a free choice.
I guess the gender spectrum doesn't actually exist then.
Don't be a clown.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.